Hey everyone, this is me, Lance Meister, the Undead Viking. I am here to talk to, an old friend. Bill and I have, it's one of those weird situations where right at the beginning of the big giant internet slash D&D craze from many, many years ago, we became friends online and we've never actually physically seen each other. However, we talk on the phone a lot, especially during Minnesota Vikings season, since we're both longtime fans of the team. But also we talked about gaming and life and everything else all together. And we're here to talk about Bill's newest creation, the Necromancer's game, currently live on Kickstarter. Bill, how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Good. It's weird to be not talking about fumbling in the fourth quarter. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's just get it out of the way. What you think of the draft? Give me just quick Minnesota Vikings draft
yeah.
feelings.
Well, I think both of us have been fans since most of our whole lives. I watched my first Vikings game as Super Bowl IV, and cheering for the Vikings, and of course they lost, and then they lost Super Bowl VI, and then they lost, and it continued to lose. I actually wrote my first multi-page term paper about the Minnesota Vikings and them losing the big one. And then, of course, we followed them and talked on the phone about every time they've had a playoff game. And I remember, 4 years ago, they were ahead by 10 points with 2 minutes to go. And we actually thought maybe we'd win, and they ended up losing by 4. So, and I think you introduced your kid to being a Vikings fan recently, and prepped him for the heartache that it would cause us.
Oh yeah, no, my son, my youngest son, Caleb. He frets and worries about the Vikings constantly, and I said, "Well, just get used to it." So
yeah, you get an ulcer, kid. Don't worry about it.
yeah. So, but we're not here to talk about the Minnesota Vikings. We're here to talk about the Necromancer's game, live on Kickstarter right now, fully funded, hit some stretch goals, I believe. And this is your creation, and from what I understand, this is. You've been playing D&D forever, right?
Yes, about 77.
Yeah. So you're one of the few people that I'm friends with who actually got into D&D before I did. I can't track it down to an exact year, but I'm guessing it was around 79 was when I got into it. But this is the game that when you sit down and play, and how often do you play D&D?
Well, I play a live game twice a month. We play, and Zeb and Helen Cook and Kurt Gould, who used to work at WotC, and then a bunch of folks off the Nimitz, depending on whether they're at sea or not. My daughter still plays with us bi-weekly, and then several of our other friends play. And so that's our in-person game is every other Sunday. We've got a game coming up this Sunday, and we've been doing that for many years. Zeb moved out here a few years ago, and it was great because he told me he was moving to this gigantic metropolis called Paulsbo, Washington, and I started laughing. And I was like, "You mean that town of 8,000 people where I live?" And he had no idea I lived here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we've been friends for 25 years, and then lo and behold, he lives like 2.5 miles from me now. Anyway, so that game we play twice a month, and then my online game I run a Wednesday afternoon game as part of my Patreon, and then with a few of my other friends that are regulars that I've known at conventions for years, and things like that. And we play that almost every Wednesday. I'd say we typically make it probably an average of 3 times a month on that one. Sometimes I've got conventions, or I'm out of town, or I've got someplace I'm going, or like today I've got an interview at 5, so we're going to knock off early because we play in the mid-afternoons. All of them are East Coast, and I'm West Coast, and I don't have a day job, so so we play to accommodate their schedule pretty well. But that one's neat because I've got my in-person game. I think we have 16 players.
I just can't imagine. But we'll talk about that. That's one of the reasons why the way you play works. So
and then my online game, I've got 12.
That's just an insane number of people.
And it's really cool though, because like the folks off the Patreon, I don't think they some of these guys pay a lot of money to be in that game, and you gotta be on your toes, right?
Yeah, I got you. So but this box set that is currently live on Kickstarter, the Necromancer's game, this is what you play when you're playing these groups of 12 to 16 people. And I want to get into I want to get granular with how your system works. But obviously, I mean, if you've got people on Patreon giving you money just for the privilege of sitting down, with the Frog God himself, I mean, it has to work, right? I mean,
it works. With the large groups work really well. It's part of the sort of the genesis of this is, back in the day, right? I mean, we had almost no rules. I mean, I'm talking about pre-player's handbook, right? And so there was some Arduino stuff out there, and then I happen to know the guys from Caltech who did Balboa games, if you remember Warlock.
Yep.
And some really early primitive stuff. And you kind of cobbled together. Actually, my first DM was one of the guys from Balboa Games, a guy named Steve Peterson. Not Steve Peterson of Chaosium fame, but a different Steve Peterson. He's been, he was a computer hacker back in the 70s. But anyway, so we had multitudes of these indie rule systems, which was all that existed, most of whom got sued out of existence by TSR pretty rapidly. And so you sort of cobble together your house rules, because the white box by itself, without house rules, I don't know anybody who actually plays it. Like, they all have house rules to go along with it, because there's no rules for almost anything, right? Other than how to fight and how to make saving throws. And so, everybody developed their own set of house rules. And of course, so, as did I, because I was, as soon as Steve went back to college, I got elected DM. And so I was the DM for our home group, which was at the time maybe 12 guys, 11 guys and one woman, believe it or not, even back then. And you had to figure out how to adjudicate something like, how do you cross that, rickety bridge that has no hand railings on it, or how do you get out of the way of, the Indiana Jones rollerball trap thing, because there were no thieves, remember, too. So that was like, thieves were like the new invention back in that. Balboa actually invented thieves. But not all of them could detect traps, so it was like a Vancian thief-based system, which is kind of interesting. I won't go down that rabbit hole.
Well, I mean, and I remember hearing, you hear anecdotal things, but I remember hearing like Gary Gygax, like he just despised the thief class just because it solved too many problems for the players, where it was like, instead of people using and I don't want to go too far into the weeds here, but instead of using intuition and trying to use your own brain to figure out a puzzle, it was like, well, I got a 15% chance of doing it. Oh, I got 11. So I disarmed the trap, so.
And actually, you probably like my thieves, because they can detect traps, but they have to tell me what they're doing to disarm them. So
all right. Let's talk about build,
so the genesis of this is I had to develop home rules. And so I developed my own home rules. And we played those because we played all the time. And I'm talking about from, about probably 79 to when I graduated from college in 80 to 88. We played constantly, and even in college, that's where I met Clark and that kind of thing. And we played we were all in the same fraternity. There were 6 of us there, which is, we only had 6 players because there were just 6 of us who played in our fraternity. But, we played probably 4 or 5 days a week. And so the rules kept changing and mutating a little bit, because they had to get clearer and easier to use and faster to use and that kind of thing. And so what this book represents, or what this box set's going to represent, is the kind of polished version of my house rules, play tested for about the last 3 years by people like Zeb Cook. And my kids who are, can figure out how to break rules on anything, that facilitated that kind of white box style game. And so one of the things, of course, I bought the player's handbook back in the day, in 79 or 78, whenever it came out. And one of the things I thought that white box lacked, and some of them were in Greyhawk and Blackmoor and Eldritch Wizardry, of course, was the number of classes. And so I added the other classes out of those. And so I've got white box rules for bards and druids and paladins and rangers and that kind of thing. The other thing I always sort of hated was the experience points being where you'd have your 5th level thief, but he's really becomes obsolete by the time your cleric hits 3rd level and your wizard hits 3rd level, because the knock and find traps go away, come in. And so I tried to balance the classes so that they were all equal. And they were all equal in power and abilities, and also equal in experience points. So everybody goes up at the same level. And we spent a lot of energy making that happen. Well, I could take this 1,000 different directions, but I guess the biggest thing is for, like you said earlier, you can run big groups for this. Everything can be resolved with 2 die rolls maximum. And then, so it goes really fast and really smooth. And the rules are really simple. There's not, it's D20s and D6s.
Yeah, so I want to stop you right there. Where's my D8? Where's my D10? Where's my D12? Why do you ditch those out of the game?
Yeah, you can use them if you want. And actually, if you go to Greyhawk, it has those rules in it. I just never used them. And so I just applied modifiers. So like a 2-handed weapon does D6 plus 1, and a dagger does a D6 minus 1. And that sort of harkens back to chainmail.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, and this might be, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to watch this that are going to know what we're referencing, but I remember like the old basic set. And I remember they had variable weapon damage rules in there where they basically said, oh, if you have a 2-handed sword, it does D10 instead of just D6 and stuff like that. And I remember as a kid thinking, well, why wouldn't you not use the variable weapon damage rules? Like it never made any sense to me not to.
I guess the logic is a blow that causes a D6 will kill someone, right? And so, back in the day and in my game, giant creatures do 2d6 damage, right? Which is enough to kill 2 human-sized creatures. And why do I do that? I don't know. That's just the way I've always done it. You could certainly apply the variable weapon damage to this, and it wouldn't change anything. It's just not the way I've always done it.
Okay. And I'm not trying to find problems with your system. I just
not at all. I'm not sure it's a problem. It's just I just never liked it, so I didn't put it in.
Well, that's the other thing too. I always you'd have as gamers, we tend to find loopholes, right? You dig and you try to find a way to break a certain thing. So it's like, wait a minute now. And even in with variable weapon damage rules, I remember it was always like a 2-handed sword costs 50 gold, but this pole arm costs 7 gold. So why wouldn't I just buy the pole arm?
Because you can hit somebody 10 feet away. Well, pole arms. Yeah. It was all about the speedum and the bardache.
Man, the list of the 27 different halberds that you could use and why.
A lot of the reason that I didn't include that, and honestly, and didn't put it in later because a couple people tried to get me to, was, again, you go back to the simplicity thing. And, you try to keep it as simple as possible, because then a combat round with 15 people takes about 3 minutes in my game. And
I believe you, because I've seen the videos. I've seen videos of you at a convention standing on top of the table, walking up and down and saying and just handling a combat that quickly. But it's so out of place, I guess, in today's games. And I guess you'd have to admit that you're removing a lot of the specialization the characters have, now with either Pathfinder 2 or 5th edition, where you see these massive builds. And this is not me saying, oh, that's a horrible way to play the game. I don't want
no judgment.
Yeah, people love that stuff, right? They love having that character and they build it up and they have this creation. But
maybe that's where I know we talked earlier a little bit. You wanted me to talk about why this game is different than other games or other OSR games, and that's my games. And I think you've seen videos of me in conventions, but anybody who's played with me a lot knows my games are not murder hobo combat games, right? If you're playing a white box or an OD&D game, you're fragile, and you don't want to fight stuff because you don't get a lot of experience points for fighting stuff. You get a lot of experience points for solving things, accomplishing objectives, and for gaining treasure. My kids one time at a convention ran with Eric Mona in one of those they call it the Delve or something, right, where they give you an impossible to beat monster and the object is to how long you can stay alive, and they actually tricked Eric, stole the treasure, and escaped the dungeon. And he's like, but you wouldn't have gotten any experience points for that. My daughter's at about 8 years old was like, that's BS. She goes, we got out of there with our lives and we got the treasure and we should get full experience points. And he's like, fine, fine, fine. You know, he's right. You know, you defeated the monster completely, and you know, but they just completely avoided it by kind of talking their way through it and tricking the monster. And so the way that, one of the things that's a little different about this, and one of the things I came up with really early on when we were playing after a TPK basically every game, right, back in the day, was, okay, well, can you negotiate with stuff? Can you talk to stuff? What about, do monsters run away if they're scared? How does a player character run away if they encounter something that's too big for them? And so I developed what I would say are extensive, at least for OD&D, rules about morale and about parlaying. And by extensive, I mean they take 1 or 2 dice rolls, right? But the rules are they're in there and they're really useful. And so negotiating and parlaying with creatures, assuming they're not truly chaotic, which would be like an intelligent undead or a demon or an evil priest or something, there's a good chance that the ogre doesn't want to fight all 6 of you guys, because he probably will kill you, but it might kill him and he's not sure. So if you guys give him 50 gold pieces, maybe he walks away. Maybe he just walks away because you have 3 elves pointing bows at him and he knows he's going to be in trouble.
But how smart is an ogre, though? Right? I mean,
how hard is an ogre in an OD&D game? They're brutal. You have 3 hit points at first level, man.
Well, yeah. I mean,
and if the sleep spell works, great, but it's a 50-50 shot, right? And so if it doesn't work, but an ogre might, a dragon would be the same kind of thing, and so the parley rules and the morale rules are something that is a little new and different for white box games. The focus of the game being on, rescuing the prince or the princess, or as opposed to slaying the giants that have them prisoner, stealing, Bilbo stealing the cup from Smaug's horde and getting out the back door rather than killing Smaug. And so things like that would be more the focus of the style of play that I have. And I've built a game that's where you are rewarded very little for killing things, but you're rewarded far more for achieving objectives. And I think there's an example on the Kickstarter that it's like a PDF you can open up that has an example of play and how the experience points are awarded. And it illustrates pretty clearly the morale and the parley rules and that kind of thing. And
I've seen the PDF, and I encourage everybody to go download that and check that out. And also, I was one of the lucky few that got one of your predecessing copies of this, where you had that. Yeah. Which was a fantastic read. I mean, obviously it's a smaller version of it. I understand the appeal because I'm an OSR person. I've been playing, and I've told you this before. I mean, like, we don't even play a rule system. We play a rule system we wrote ourselves back in high school.
As do I.
Yeah, and so. But I understand the appeal of OSR systems, and what I usually end up doing is whatever the OSR system is, I buy it to steal from it, right? Just like that's a really good way to do that. So when I look at this, the Necromancer's game, I'm sure people will buy it and play it, but I want to get it and read it all. 1, because I collect things, but 2, I want to steal from it, and I want to use the stuff that's a great way to run that. I want to incorporate them in my home.
I have a really important comment specifically on that.
Okay, but I want to hear that comment, and then I'll let you expound on that. But I don't want you to forget it. But I also want to know. But I got it. Like say my son. My son got into. My son is in middle school. He's 13 years old. He got into 5th edition D&D with his friends when he was 11. And so he's been playing for a couple years, but say I've been playing 5th edition D&D for 2 to 5 years. How is the Necromancer's game going to appeal to me as far as a system that I'm going to want to either read, play, steal from, or what have you? And then expound first your comment, and then answer that question.
I can wrap both of those into one response.
Go for it.
So first of all, the only thing in the Necromancer's game that is unique to the Necromancer's game, meaning the rules, that would not wouldn't translate over to 5th edition or something like that are the character class rules. So you could still apply the parlay rules, you could still apply the lore checks, and I'll talk about lore in a little bit later. You could still apply the morale stuff. And then I was really careful to make the entire 3rd book, the Game Master's book, which is one of the bigger of the 3 books, so that it could be used with anything. And so what it consists of is a lot of game master theory and experience over the years of how to do things and everything else, like the Book of Dirty Tricks that I wrote or whatever. And probably the most extensive encounter tables that anybody besides me has ever produced, because of course I did Mother of All encounter tables back in the day with White Wolf, and that was immense. But what we did was we did a lot of work about talking about different types of campaign styles, how hex crawls work, how dungeon crawls work, how other things like that work, and some ideas of how to run those things. And then we did encounter tables that are about 40 pages, and then examples of each type of encounter, where maybe they're D1000 tables, so you got to roll your D20 3 times. So I guess there's one more kind of die roll in there. But only about 400 or 500 of those are encounters with creatures. There's also, you find an oasis in the desert, or you find a castle in the mountains, or you find caves in the hills, or you find a sinkhole in the plains, or somebody randomly set a trap that you fall in, or things like that, and then examples of all those things, and then likewise settlements, obviously focused on a hex crawl type thing, where the settlement size and what kind of stuff is in those settlements. So I spent a couple hundred pages, I think, putting together material that would be useful in any system. And I think a 5th edition player, 5e, the big difference in 5e and 0e, whatever, is sort of the super builds on character classes, and then the how you die mechanics. And again, the character rules wouldn't translate over, but I think everything else in the box set would. And further, it's just sort of a different style of play, and there's a lot of write-up on how to do that, which is, how do you make it so you're not focused on just killing everything in your path? Certainly, idea building stuff that I think works really well for 5e. A good example of it is in the expansion pack, which has this thing in it, which is the draft map, the Caves of Duskfell, which is it's a vampire adventure. Surprise, surprise. I think there's 23 encounter areas total, and there's about 4 potential combat encounters, including, of course, the boss at the end, which is a big nasty vampire, right? But almost all of it is investigation. You'd almost think it's a Cthulhu game. It's investigation, it's puzzle solving, it's finding clues, it's figuring out that there is a vampire, prepping to go find the vampire, and then solving your way through riddles and puzzles and secret doors and traps to get to the vampire's lair and destroy him before the blood moon rises, and you got 30 days or whatever to do that, right?
Time limits. If I could say anything to anybody who's listening to this, put time limits on anything that your characters have to go through and do.
Yeah, there's a whole write-up in the DM guide, or GM guide, I have to call it, because I can't call it DM guide. A whole write-up in the GM guide about creating sense of urgency, and how to do that, and some tips on how to do that. And I think I'm pretty good at that. After I don't know how many thousands of games I run, but I think there's a lot of stuff in there. And I played a lot of 5e because I played, I was at Steve Winter and Wolfgang and Jeff Grubb and those guys' group for a long time. We play tested the Strahd adventure, for 5e, for example, back about 8 or 9 years ago. Nice. So I understand 5e, and I think that I think it lends itself well. I don't think particularly Pathfinder 3.5 lends itself that well to a lot of this stuff. Some of it would, but less, I think, than a 5e game. Because it's 3.5 and Pathfinder and 3.0 are really focused on, smashing the hell out of a monster. For all your experience points comes from combat. And so unless you wanted to adjust that and do it differently, then that's it. The other now, so the final note on this that I'd really say is, as far as any game system goes, is the Necromancer's game is really different than a lot of OSR games because it's heavily focused on a long-term campaign. I've run my campaign with some of the same players now here in my home game for up to 15 years. And likewise, my convention games, some of those players are actually 3 players. I think Ian McGarty, Jillian, and my son John all have leveled out and had to start new characters. And I think Alberta Chulik is about to be there. I think her paladin is 9th level, so she's done. Basically, I think she's got like 1 or 2 more sessions because at name level, at 10th level, I make them stop playing, at least for now, because it gets kind of silly in an OD&D game. But you build a castle or build a temple or whatever you're going to do, and then you become an NPC. But the game really is focused on long-term play for OD&D, which I think a lot of OD&D games are focused more on play a couple of times, get to 3rd or 4th level, and then then you're going to get killed, or you're done, and you start up a new one and you do another one shot, because the game's so lethal. And if it's really heavily focused on combat, the monsters are going to roll some 20s and you're going to roll some 1s, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's save or die, stuff like that. And my game is definitely focused on, there's going to be combat. You're going to have to fight some stuff, right? And especially if you're, a paladin or somebody that's got what do paladins do? They kill evil priests or they kill demons, right?
Yep.
But the game is more focused on figuring out, how to accomplish things rather than just go out and stomp on stuff. One of the cute examples I give is my home group now is friends with a tribe of kobolds, and they've got like a trade associate. They basically trade. They bring them metal weapons. The kobolds have given them they get like baskets of scorpions and stuff. But then they see the kobolds. The kobolds are like, hey man, they throw out the trading blanket, and they made friends with these guys rather than attack them, because kobolds aren't evil in my game. They're kind of humans think they are, but they think humans are evil. And so,
well, therein lies the big question: who's the most evil? Is it the person that goes into the hole to kill the things and take their gold, or is it the stuff that's in the hole? So I mean,
yeah, and that dates back to I think it's Chaosium way back in the day with monsters and stuff, right? When they put out those books in the late 70s, where you played the monsters and the evil PCs were coming into your home and trying to kill you and steal your stuff.
Yep.
And we played that game, and that's sort of where that inspired me on the way that I run games.
Honestly. Or the old computer game, Wizardry 3 or 4 was the Revenge of Vecna or whatever. The wizard that you killed in the first one crawled out of the dungeon to seek his revenge for being slain all those years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And so the concept of a revenant or whatever. But yeah, so did that answer the question? I mean, I could talk about that.
Oh no, I mean, and between the two of us, we could talk for hours, and I kind of want to do. So, I mean, ultimately, what this is that it's gonna be a fantastic system. It's gonna be a lot of stuff, cool stuff to read, and I have questions I want to ask after this, and we're gonna keep recording here. But my biggest question, and this is strict, I'm running a crowdfunding. I mean, I've been working in the tabletop board game industry for, almost 12, 14 years now. And I've run dozens of Kickstarters. My biggest thing, whenever somebody says, hey, I want you to be my project manager for this, I always say, cool, why should person A back it now instead of waiting for it to come out later when they can maybe buy it at their local game store or get it somewhere else? Why should somebody, back it now? I mean, besides the fact of hey, let's support this company. Let's get this thing created. I mean, the thing's funded. It's going to be made regardless. Where's my call to action now? Why should people back it right now?
Well, as I know, and not everybody necessarily knows, but Diamond Alliance is bankrupt, and a couple of the other distributors are they're carrying very few products anymore because inflation's gone up and everything else. So the number one reason people should back it now is because every time we get another stretch goal, more stuff goes into it, right? So the customer's going to get a better product. Will it actually even end up in retail? I'm not sure. And the reason for that is real simple. When we made the decision to print it in the United States, the print cost doubled. And I'm not sure I can actually sell this thing into retail without us losing money on each unit. So it's going to be close. It sort of depends on how much we fund by. If we have a big funding, then we'll probably be able to reduce our costs some on the print side. But if I only print 1,000 of them, it ain't going to wholesalers.
And you're probably gonna have to charge more for it after the fact anyway. So
Yeah, we're going to. And well, I already adjusted that when we got our print quotes. So basically, the funding goal paid for the printing. As I tell everybody, pretty much it was, and it didn't quite. I think our print cost is going to be about $29,000 or $30,000. I didn't have the bid for the box yet, and if you're making box sets in the U.S., buckle up, Buttercup, because
let me give you a pause here. I mean, I was gonna say, where
Yeah.
is this being printed? I mean, I know people are gonna ask, what about the tariffs? So what about, if you're printing this in China, am I gonna
Right.
are they gonna get hammered after the fact? Did
Right.
I
No,
just construe from what you said that you're printing this in the United States?
United States. We're printing it. So we're printing it with a printer we used. We used Walsworth for many years, and everybody has seen me do. Well, not everybody. Anyone at the convention, or you at least, or somebody on video has seen me do the party trick with the giant book. Oh, let me see if I can find one. Right, I don't have one here. But if you take Slumbering Czar, you can grab it by the cover and just shake it, and it's almost 1,000 pages, and it won't break. And so that's the printer we're using for this. The challenge with printing in the U.S. is that U.S. printers are set up really well for doing things like textbooks. And so black and white printing is not any cost differential from color printing in the U.S. Color printing is very expensive in the United States. About 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, we made the decision that we were going to print in the United States, not necessarily because maybe the tariffs are going to go away or something. I don't know. Maybe they won't. Maybe they will. It's like playing Russian roulette. You don't want to go there. And people, I'll get to in a minute. People think that D&D books are not subject to tariffs. They might be right or they might be wrong. It's at the discretion of the customs officials. So basically, you are playing Russian roulette if you do that. But I wanted to make sure we didn't have supply chain disruption, and it wasn't one of those things where I did 50 or 80 or whatever $1,000, tens of thousands of dollars of my customers' money, and they got in a position where I had to not deliver it. And so I wanted to make sure we can deliver exactly what we say we're going to deliver. And so I made the conscious decision to just bite the bullet, print it in the U.S., and knock our margins way down. And that's really what happened, right?
Well, I mean, and all that says to me is that if in the situation we're in right now with our tariffs, the price that I'm locking in now is the price that I'm going to have. So I don't have to worry about it. And that's great news. I mean, for me as a backer and for anybody who's backing.
And the printing company we're using actually only uses US paper. So we picked them because we know their quality, and I wanted no risk on something bad happening 5 months from now or 6 months from now when it comes time to mail you your box set, and I say, oh, by the way, we can't afford to mail you your box set, or oh, by the way, we got a bill from U.S. Customs for $75,000 and I can't afford to pay it, or something like that. And I think, God help the industry right now.
I know it's been rough, right?
Yeah, and I printed in the U.S. for years, and when we shifted to color, I couldn't afford to. And it's interesting. Steve Chenault and I use the same printer, and for years we've used the same printer. And he was right and I was wrong, but I was wrong for years. I was able to keep our prices way down, for years. But it's just, we're going to see inflation in the industry, I think, and I think that companies that assume the risk of printing through China or the EU or something like that, and assume because of the instability, are taking a big risk. And I don't want to take a big risk with other people's money, because it's still other people's money until that book shows up in their mailbox.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, so ultimately, if after this, this is now I've got Bill kind of trapped, so I'm gonna ask him a bunch of questions about the industry and about stuff that I just want his take on. So check out
last tidbits on the box set and why you
go
should
for
back. And so it really is usable in almost any system. There are unique mechanics that haven't been presented to other people before, that I've read, at least. And I've read a lot of stuff. I've probably got 15,000 books in my D&D collection. There's some really cool adventures in there that I think are going to be inspiring. There's massive support on my Patreon, which is free to join. And I'll get Lance the links to that to put up if you want. You can pay me money every month and you get other perks, but it's free to join, and I post all kinds of stuff on there. Adventures, rules, ideas that I run by the people that are on it, previews of stuff that haven't been seen yet, new spells, new character classes, that kind of thing. And so it's I'll just tell you real quick. I can tell you it's called the Frog Pond, and it's easy to find. And I'll get Lance the links. You might even be on my Patreon. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I am on your Patreon.
But okay, good. Yeah, and so but there's a lot of free support and extra stuff that's going to be on that Patreon that goes with the game. Still live for another 30 days. I extended this one, so acknowledging that people might be a little short on cash right now with the price of groceries and stuff like that. And so that's the reason I spread it out a little longer than usual. So, hopefully folks can afford to buy in. We will print some, and I'll have some in the warehouse later. I'm not sure what the price is going to be yet. Depends on how we do, And so, like I said, if we get to $50,000, I can afford to pay the author.
Oh, wait a minute! You're the author. No.
Yeah. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, so here, these are some things that I'm interested in asking you, just because it's, and I know that a lot of this we've covered in our own personal conversations back and forth. I want you to try to limit yourself to maybe a minute or two of an answer, but I'm gonna tell you something, and I want you to kind of like give me your thoughts on it and give me your impressions on it. But I mean, so let's talk about the big one.
Okay.
Shadowdark.
Oh, I mean, it's a wonderful freaking game, and I'm a huge fan. Do I have it here? I do. I got to show you guys something because this is worth seeing.
I know what this is, but I'm excited. I'm excited for him to show it off.
So Kelsey and I are really good friends, and I play at her games at conventions. She plays at my game at conventions, and this year at GaryCon, I made her a trophy that had a torch, right? And it was passing the torch, and it was the Queen of the OSR, Kelsey Dion, from me, 2025. And then strangely enough, at the same, because she always comes over for supper. Those of you who don't know, I'm allergic to a lot of stuff, and so I usually get a kitchen when I go to conventions and cook dinner. I do dinner and a show for my players, stuff like that, Anyway, so she presented me with this, and probably almost nobody has seen it yet. This is the first press with a different cover of Shadowdark, and that was what she wrote. So, honestly, Shadowdark has taken the universe by storm. The mechanics are excellent. I think it's again, it's an OSR game. It is pretty combat focused. But I think that what she's done, and it couldn't happen to a nicer young woman. She's excellent. And I met her years ago when she got my signature on her Rappanatha copy before she was in the industry and that kind of thing. And I'm super proud to know her. I think that she is just a wonderful human being, and she's doing great things, and she has captured the universe. I mean, she's selling WotC-like numbers with that book. And so part of my motivation, this was supposed to be a Kickstarter a month and a half ago, but she called me and said that she was emailing me the press package for the Western Reaches. I called Zach and said, "Stop, we're not launching." And then and I said we're delaying to at least 2 weeks after Shadowdark's over, and we did. And of course that was smart. We would have sold all 10 units of the book if it was running during the Shadowdark campaign. But part of the reason I structured the game and the box set the way I did was that about 2/3 of my box set is compatible with Shadowdark.
Oh, nice. Well, there you go. If you're a fan of Shadowdark.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. And my son is Sneech the Goblin, in her games and their friends, yeah, she's done great stuff. And like I said, I'm not, no shame in it at all. And I told her the same thing. My Game Master's Guide and my Monster Manual are completely usable in Shadowdark.
Well, I mean, there you go. I mean, if anybody watches this and you love Shadowdark, that's a reason alone to back what Bill's creating here. I mean, is there any mechanism, I guess, that's within Shadowdark that either you wish you had come up with, or is it something that you you're porting over to the Necromancer's game?
Absolutely. And I already told her I was shamelessly stealing this about a year ago. I deleted the continual light spell from my game. And got rid of infravision. And And so even most monsters can't see in the dark, right? Just like Shadowdark. And I thought that that was a genius mechanic because it creates, particularly in an old school D&D game, it creates a kind of a physical situation that adds scariness and hazard and terror to the game, which is you got to have light or you can't see. And so sure, your wizard can turn invisible and sneak up on stuff, but he can't see. He can't see unless there's light, right? Um, and I thought that was a genius mechanic, and I flagrantly borrowed that from Shadowdark as a rule. Um, and I thought it was a good rule, and I'd never seen it done that way before, ever.
Yeah, I
And
mean, and just if you're watching this, you don't know it's torches last an hour of real game time. Like,
yeah,
and so you keep a timer.
yeah,
Oh, and I mean, I actually just have one of these. Like, if you have one of these, you can buy these little lights that last for 1 hour that you can have, and you can actually have them play while you're
yeah,
playing.
I thought that was absolutely genius. I sort of like the way she does her spell system as well. And the where the you roll success, you roll a difficulty class check or whatever to use your spells. You can use them as many times as you want until you fail. I didn't do things that way. I'm still a Vancian guy, tried and true. But in her game, I play a wizard, and so I liked it. I felt like it made the wizards a little more powerful. Um, but which is maybe a good thing in an OD&D game because you're sort of a one trick wonder with the wizard. But
So, so just so that people understand, when he's saying Vancian, you have to go back to Jack Vance novels, and like if you ever think of like the whole you memorize your spells and then you use them, that was something that Jack Vance created. Go read Jack Vance if you haven't
yeah,
read Jack
yeah,
Vance. Go read
Tales,
Jack
Tales
Vance.
of the Dying Earth, brilliant book.
Yeah.
The other thing I liked about Shadowdark is that she came up with, and this I've always done as well. So I didn't really take it from Shadowdark, but the sort of the mundane magic items that why would a farmer want a +1 sword? Well, he wouldn't. He'd want a plow that worked twice as fast, or things like that. So there's a lot of I've got an entire section in my treasure tables of mundane magic items, and Shadowdark does sort of the same thing. It's a little different. I mean, I've always had that. It's the blanket of comfort that lets you regain 2 hit points instead of 1 hit point a night, or something that repels insects, or they're all minor little use things. But I've always had those in my games,
But they add
and
nice little flavor to
that's
what's
nice
going on.
flavor. And some of them were downright useful. There's the candle that dispels foul odors, and if you encounter troglodytes or ghasts, it'll nullify that. So it's a really but it's one of those things where the farmer puts it in their outhouse like a Febreze candle, but you can use it to fight with troglodytes or with stuff like that. So those are some overlaps with Shadowdark that I thought were good. But the light thing is really that was the coolest rule I've ever seen somebody come up with. That shockingly I've never seen before.
Yeah, no,
And
I agree. It was pretty amazing.
yeah, I mean I've
Uh,
35 years of DM and I've never seen anybody do that.
Well, I mean, it's just so commonplace, right? You just assume you can see, and a lot of people just there's a lot of rules people just would hand wave away because they were just upkeep, and it kind of maybe were barriers to the fun, right? I mean, I want to just search the room. Why is this so difficult? I mean, I remember one of the best things. I mean, strangely, when you shouldn't say anything really good came out of COVID, but when I played online and you're using like a situation like Roll20, you're allowed to like put like different light on the people's pawns, and so what they could see was what they could see. And so when somebody was like 80 feet away fighting an ogre, and they're like, "You got to shoot this thing," it's like I can't see it. Because my on their screen was just like a 30-foot globe of the light that they had. They couldn't help that. But we just hand wave that stuff away when we're playing the game. We don't ever think of it because the upkeep of it, the keeping your frame of mind in that situation. It's difficult.
Yeah, yeah.
Here's one for you. And this is more philosophical. What do you see as the true role of the game master? We're not going to use the horrible DM because what do you see as storyteller, facilitator, obstruction, like somebody actively trying to to slay the adventurers? I mean, a combination of all those things. So what do you see that as?
I mean, my style is very much storyteller. And so, and I like making people think, and I like making people, I get teased by one of my players who is totally a murder hobo player, that plays at conventions, that, he asked me before, is there going to be combat in this adventure, or is it a Mensa test, and so I think that, I personally prefer a storytelling type game. There's got to be some of that adversarial stuff, especially with boss, I always call them named monsters. But
their name is in a different color than everybody else. It's yellow instead of white.
Yeah, or they're bolded.
Yeah.
The name monster. But those are the DM's player characters, right? But I mean, philosophically, I believe the DM's role primarily is as a storyteller, and so I'll provide a scenario, and then they tell me what they do, and then having to react to that is the hardest part. And so, you want them to go right, but they just don't. They go straight or they go left, and so having to facilitate what they do to make the game fun for them. If you railroad them, they aren't having fun. At that point, you might as well be playing a solo game. And so trying to be a storyteller and trying to adjust to the story that the players want to be the story, because they're participants in the story as well. And so, when I tell stories about, conventions, right, with my daughter's priest, where they got sticks to snakes thrown in the middle of their party, and the snakes are going to all poisonous, and it's going to be a TPK because there's like 32 poisonous vipers running around this party, attacking the party. And my daughter goes, I cast Snake Charm. And I was like, you don't have Snake Charm memorized. And she holds her character sheet up and goes, read it and weep. And then she lawnmowers my dungeon. Well, I mean, my daughter was the main story piece of that whole thing. She just turned the snakes around and killed all the evil priests. And then, she and Dennis Astaire just went through the dungeon, kicking doors open and murdering everything in the room. And if she couldn't murder it, she would turn it, right?
Yeah.
But the players have to be complicit's the wrong word, but they have to be a participant in the story as well. And so being the DM, your role is to adjust to the stories that the players want it to be. And I think that's the key thing. What gives them their sense of we won, even though there's no win or lose in D&D, other than maybe dying is losing. But we won. What gives them the we won thrill? What has them high-fiving at the end of the game? And that's that they participated in the story that you set the basis up for, and they got to participate in that, so they own it as well. They have ownership. And I think
I agree. I mean, and I don't mean to interview myself here, but it's tough. It's tough sometimes when you have a like, oh, this is gonna be my really, really cool encounter, and then the players come up with either like some lucky dice rolls, or they come up with a clever way to defeat it, and your mind says you've created this, like, I want this to happen from this encounter, but then they've gone a different way, and it's tough as the person running the game to like give it up and to say, okay, and you pulled it off, right? I mean, it's difficult, and I mean, I'll fully admit, after running D&D for decades, I fall into that trap still, where I'm like, well, maybe he's got 8 more hit points, so I can make sure I get this one spell off that'll be really cool right now, and it's difficult to give the players the win.
Yeah, I played in a Pathfinder game years ago, and I was playing. I was playing a sorcerer, and I had lots of disintegrate and pass wall spells, and no one could figure out why I took them, because they're kind of a dumb spell, I guess, based on the, they're not optimized or whatever. And we get out there, and the DM describes for 10 minutes he's flavor texting this big door with these demons encrusting over the thing, like some sort of Harry Potter. Like, all right, I disintegrate it. And he's like, what? And he goes, okay, what gets a save? And I go, no, it says right here in your book, no save for inanimate objects. And so he spent like 10 minutes describing this thing, and I disintegrated. And he's like, shit, and he was really at a loss, because then, we go back in this room and into this treasure. I'm like, all right, I pass wall that way. I pass wall that way. I pass wall that way. And we finished a Pathfinder adventure that was supposed to take 8 hours in about 2 hours, because I just drilled the hole through the dungeon. He had real difficulty responding and figuring out how to keep it going, He was just like, oh my God, what just happened?
And
Um,
and
and
I that stinks though, right? I mean and
yeah,
that's that whole like rules as written like mentality that a lot of people get into. And I realize that there's a balance there that you're supposed to find. You're supposed to come up with, a way to both allow somebody to be clever, but also like not, I don't know, like you hate to say ruin it, but I mean, because that like you probably felt amazing in that moment,
oh
right? You
yeah,
were like,
right. But it's no different than in my, keep pity me because I play with Zeb and Helen Cook and Jillian, and so Jillian's my daughter, and they're all smarter than me. We were playing in the current group was playing in Rapid Ethics during the date, the in-person game. And so they level 9 on Rapid Ethic is the big evil temple, right? So they pop this thing open, the demon appears, the paladin goes in combat with the demon, they see the evil priest mobilizing behind it, and Helen's like, I rock to mud the ceiling of the temple. I was like, all right. And it buries all the evil priests, buries all the treasure and stuff too, but destroys the temple because she rocked him out of the ceiling, right?
yeah,
And it was like, damn, I was all geared up for this big, boss fight with the level 9 priest and da da da, no, they're just all dead, and you got to deal with the type 2 demon now, but whoopee,
yeah,
they're
whoopee, yeah, I mean,
15 8th and 9th level characters, or a 7th through 9th, I guess.
yeah.
But yeah, the paladin and the fighter splattered it in 2 rounds, right? But it was, but it was like, okay, well, that's what they did, and they won. They accomplished the objective. They got a lot of experience points for destroying that evil temple. They didn't get all the treasure, but they, because it was buried under, 5 million pounds of dirt. But, but
I
it
mean,
was,
sometimes it gets there's just too many rules though, right?
yeah,
I mean, and that's, I mean, and this is something we'll retread on a lot of statements that have been made by much more eloquent people than myself. I mean, but like as a person who runs the game, like being up to date on like every single spell, every single situation, every single power, every single character ability, and then being able to somehow still create a challenge for those players once they get to a certain level. I mean, like you said, you get to name level, you build a keep out in the wildlands, and you become an NPC and you start over.
or you can stay up PC, you just can't go adventure, and basically you're the patron of the new set of player characters. I mean, that works too. But yeah, it really is. I mean, in OD, I don't know anybody who really plays OD&D above about 9th or 10th level. It does get kind of silly because, you fight 6 Balrogs, it's not going to work.
No, I mean, well, it's like that old, oh man, I forget the short story. I think it was a Clark Ashton Smith story, but where the big giant conqueror, like, just defeats everything, and it's like a 6-page story. I wish I knew and remember the name of it. But then eventually he comes to like the wizards like conclave, their thing, and he's like, oh, it's like, and now I will destroy this one, and like the one like old wizard kind of pokes his head over the thing, and he animates all of the stone dragons that protect it and just walks away.
Yeah.
And then they never hear of the conqueror again, because
exactly. Actually, Harry Potter books took something from that story because with the golems outside on Hogwarts, but I remember I know the story you're talking about. I can't remember what it is. I've read the collected works. Hell, the reason I call myself Sathaga is because of Hyperborea, right?
Yeah. But and I agree. It's like once you get to a certain level, that's winning, right? You survived. You got to. All right. So here's a couple of rapid fire questions. Do you think people do you allow resurrection and raise dead in your campaigns, or when you're dead, you're dead?
Yeah, raise dead. Yes. I think it's important because you die a lot.
Is there a penalty? Is there a penalty for?
In my games, you lose 1 point of Constitution. That's every time.
The classic old, I mean, I think that was like the old school one where it was just like you lose a point of con every single. Yeah, and just all right. I know the answer to this question, but why are wandering monsters important?
Wandering monsters are important because they create senses of urgency. Everyone always jokes about, and this one actually, I got to say this one because it's funny. in one of my decks of dirty tricks, there's a spell. It's the spell I'm about to mention that says no one's used this spell since 1981, and that spell's Mass Morph because it eliminates wandering monsters for 12 hours. It's a fourth level wizard spell, and it's a great spell because
I can't even remember. Well, how does it eliminate wandering monsters?
party into trees or rocks or something, and it's an undetectable illusion. So it's a we camp for the night, nothing eats us. We camp for the
Oh, yeah. I mean, I always had the people that would do the rope trick, right?
Rope
You know, rope trick, and then climb up into a weird space of nothing, and
That's all about the Mass Morph spell, and and rope trick. Of course, I don't have in my game, but Mass Morph, or I guess Leomund's Tiny Hut, which you can't use anymore. At least you can call it Tiny Hut, I guess. But I always thought it was kind of dumb. Um, but the I escape spells are important to avoid. Wandering monsters don't generate cash, and they don't generate. All they do is generate risk, right? And so, you got to teach your players to run away. You got to teach your players to negotiate. The other thing I really use my wandering monster tables for a lot is hex crawls. And so I don't necessarily know what's in each one of those hexes, right?
yeah.
But this is another map this is actually one that I generated by using my tables that's in the box set. They find a treasure map, and then they have to travel 140 miles to this dungeon that they're trying to get to. And so I randomly rolled encounters up throughout the thing, and it could vary from, insects that will sting you like beehives to a chimera in one case. And do you really want to fight a chimera if you're a third level character? Well, probably not.
No, I mean, and because it bogs down. Well, it uses up your healing. It uses up.
Yeah, uses up resources and probably kills a few people. So, but there's, if they speak to the badger that they find the badger's den using a speak with animals spell, the badger can warn them about the chimera, and if they decide not to just murder the badger or bypass it, they can find out about the chimera and duck out of the way to avoid its island that it's on or whatever. And so that's, again, it goes back to the gathering information and knowing what's around you. And avoiding things that aren't going to give you much gain. And so I also use wandering monsters as a story building tool. Rather than you travel 2 weeks to get here, well, while traveling, you encounter, like I said, a badger that warns you on a chimera, or a pack of wolves that if you throw them some meat and talk to them or whatever, they'll help you find a shortcut through the woods to go see the oracle that you're seeking, because they know where she is, because she's nice to him.
Yeah, I mean, it's stuff like that, and it also makes the world like that. What's the word? I can't remember the actual, like, the big long word, but it makes the world seem real, right? I mean, it makes it seem organic and not just this is my encounter for day one, this is my encounter for day two. Verisimilitude. There you go. That's the word I was
There
thinking.
you go. So there's a cocktail party word, but it also kind of makes it where they can go back, and now maybe they're friends with that hill giant that they decided to become friends with. And so every time they stop back by, they bring him a half a dozen sheep, and they have a safe place to sleep for the night.
Yeah, because all right, and then the last one, like, if you could, if you had the ability to, like, step in, like the frog god, and step into every single, I mean, the world is the YouTube and the world is rife with these are the things you're doing wrong when you run a game of Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. This is what you should avoid or whatever. If you could just step down from your froggy throne and just give one, and you don't have to make it succinct, but one piece of advice to somebody who's, like, getting ready to start running their very first ever D&D session, what would you tell them?
Honestly, if just don't stick too hard to the rules, because if you're rolling dice and you're having fun, then you're winning. Right. I mean, that's I don't care if you play Pathfinder 1 or Pathfinder 2 or Monsters or Call of Cthulhu or the Necromancer's game or Shadowdark or Swords and Wizardry or OD&D or AD&D or whatever it is. If you and your players are having fun, make it fun. And if the rules make sense, then use the rules. If the rules don't make sense, don't use the rules. If the guy has to make a spot check to see the falling star that's falling out of the sky and landing, and making a crater, then there's something screwed up with that rule. If the thief is doing a, I don't know, what do they call it now? It's not search anymore. It's investigation check.
Yeah, investigate or whatever. Yeah.
Doing an investigation check to detect the trap, which has a giant scythe blade hanging over like a sword of Damocles over his head. When you ought to be able to clearly see it, just let him clearly see it. It's again, and the game master's got a dissertation on this about, these are rules or guidelines. If it makes sense, just let it happen. You don't need to roll. It's when do you roll dice and when do you not roll dice. And so that's
awesome. Know when you should roll and know when you shouldn't bother.
Yeah, it's know when to hold them, know when to fold them. And if you don't think it would require a die roll, don't make them roll a die. I mean, that's because it bogs things down. B, it creates situations where something really dumb happens because the elf with his really good vision doesn't see something 5 feet away.
Why?
Yeah. And you just don't have to roll. That happens. Okay. And likewise, I'm going to try and jump the 100-foot chasm. All right. But no.
But I rolled a 20. No, you did. Cool. Yeah. You made it 25 feet.
Yeah. And actually 5e did a great job with that. I got to give them kudos. They made it so natural 20s on skill checks did not always succeed. And I think that was the first time, third and fourth edition and 3.5 all had that. Natural 20 is always a success. Okay, well, I try to leap the Grand Canyon. I rolled a 20. I leaped the Grand Canyon. And that made no sense.
No, it really didn't.
Applying number one piece of advice I'd give somebody trying to run a game.
And what kind of advice would you give somebody who's been running games for 25 years?
Well, I mean, if you're having fun and you like the way you do it, just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, that's the big thing. And if you don't like something, change it. I mean, it doesn't, you don't have to, again, I always look at rules as guidelines. And so if if it says, well, you must make an investigation check to detect a trap, but it doesn't make any sense, don't make them roll. It's really no different. I think a lot of people get too bogged down in rules. And one of the reasons I don't like a lot of rules is specifically because you get bogged down in rules and then you're not really telling a story, you're doing rules.
You're just running a spreadsheet and letting.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love games with rules. I'm an avid World War II tabletop miniatures guy, and there's a lot of rules. There's no role playing, but that's a different kind of game. And so, if you want to play a tactical role, if you want to play a tactical war game, play a tactical war game. And even if you're playing D&D as a tactical war game, hell, that's how it started.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you want a role playing game, then play a role playing game. If you want a tactical war game, play a tactical war game. And neither one's right or wrong. But I think Pathfinder's a tactical war game. I don't think it's a role-playing game. I can certainly, having played a lot of 3.0 and 3.5, that's absolutely a tactical war game.
Fourth edition too. It became
Fourth edition was almost a board game, but you get guys like Casey Christopherson or somebody like that, and you give them that many rules. And the next thing you know, their unkillable 8th level barbarian sorcerer thing is moving 200 feet per round, smacking everything within 10 feet with whirlwind attack or whatever it was. And then, ending up on the opposite side of the table where the monster can't even strike back. And I mean, there was some broken stuff, man.
Oh yeah. We all had our moment where in Pathfinder where, our warrior with mighty blow and two-handed elven curved blade was rolling a critical hit 11 through 20, and just with 5 attacks around, it was just a Ginsu, just a spinning death monster.
Yeah, that was Casey in 3.5. His barbarian thing, his conglomeration was just gnarly. And so, but again, it didn't make any sense. It was like, okay, well, he moves 100 feet, and attacks everything within 10 feet. And, has weapon specialization in whatever one of the polearms was that did the most damage. And it was like, he ended up getting, he waltzed through an army one time, getting like 50 attacks. And it was like, I was like, oh my God.
I mean, a great power fantasy moment, but ultimately just kind of like, what are we doing here? It's just...
We were playing champions at that point.
Yeah, exactly. I still remember I still remember I was in a game with a guy. I'm not going to use any names. Not that this guy would ever watch this video, but I still remember he said, well, no, he ruled against, like, I wanted my D&D character to do X, Y, or Z, and I said, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why can't I do that? It says here in the rules, and because it's stupid.
It's
I
dumb.
mean, it's dumb. And I was like, well, but it's in the rules. And then this was probably the wrong thing to say, but it has stuck with me ever since. He handed me a Dungeon Master's Guide. He said, well, how about you take this and take your player's handbook and you go into the room over there and play by yourself and see how much fun you have.
Right, exactly.
He's like, my job here is to adjudicate, and it's dumb that your character would do that. And he was kind of a dink for saying it the way he did, but it stuck with me. It was like one of those things where it's like, that's dumb. Just because the rules say that it should work like that, we should probably not have the rules work like that.
Well, that's where I'll say the cliche saying, but I think that so actually it really dawned on me right now. What I would say to somebody who's been running games for 30 years is adopt the concept of rulings, not rules. And that's the cliche OSR statement, right? Is rulings, not rules. But because I think Gary Gygax said it one time years and years ago. But it really is a good way to look at things, is rulings, not rules. And I'm not sure I need to explain that in great ways.
I mean, ultimately, the way to succinctly say it is, it's just like, and I've heard a lot of people say, if a player says I should be able to get this, and the game master says this, you decide this is how it's going to work, and we're moving forward, and you just
make your case for it, and if I think it's reasonable, then I'll say okay.
And more often than not, tell the player yes. I mean, honestly, I firmly believe that, I've definitely gotten into a situation where people said, well, I think my character would know this. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Your character would know that.
On that note, one mechanic I didn't talk about is the lore mechanic.
Yes, I was going to ask you that before we left.
Yeah,
so tell me about the lore.
That's sort of the, so we never had skills and feats and all that other stuff back in the day, right? But everybody always wanted to know, would my character know this? And of course, the standard answer back then is roll a d6, right? And so, and if you're smart, maybe you have a better chance, and if you're dumb, maybe you have a worse chance. Or if your paladin's trying to roll the big rock in front of the tomb, maybe that would be something that he would know how to do, right? Or the dwarf is trying to detect a trap because they have stonework stuff. So I have a well-defined, with a couple hundred examples, mechanic, and you can see this in the PDF, sort of how it works, the one that's free on the Kickstarter. Go download it and look at it. But we have a mechanic called lore. And so, for example, bards are very good at knowing lots of stuff, but they're not necessarily expert at knowing any individual thing. Mm-hmm. Whereas like a wizard has really good lore about things wizardy, but they don't know anything about heraldry or that kind of thing. And it sounds complicated, but it's really simple. It's just a d6 roll, and it's modified by, whatever makes sense. So like if you're trying to acrobatically cross a rope bridge, maybe it's a lore check against your dexterity. And if it's your dex is 13 or higher, you get one better on it. And if your dex is 7 or lower, you get one worse on it. And it's, again, resolved with one die roll. And it is vague a little bit in the game on purpose, because it's up to the DM and the player to decide whether they know anything about farming. So, a hobbit might, for example, or but a paladin probably wouldn't. And so our druid certainly would. So again, I wouldn't make the druid roll. I'd make the hobbit roll, and I wouldn't let the paladin roll in that case. So there's and the utility of bards, I finally figured out a way to make bards viable, because they're bad wizards, bad thieves, and bad fighters, right? Is you give them lore on everybody, so they have all lore.
Nice.
And so, if it's wizard lore, they have it. It's not as good a chance as the wizard would have. If there's a druid lore, they have it. It's not as good as the druids would be. It's typically 1 point worse on a d6, but they get to roll on all lore skills, because they're jacks. They know, they drink and they know things, right?
Jack of all trades, master of none, as they say.
Absolutely. And actually, Jillian, basically they always I give a little bonus experience points to the MVP of the playing session, they get like an extra 50 experience points or something. And I think the bard wins about 3/4 of the time because the ranger misses his tracking roll, but the bard rolls a 1 and makes it.
Nice.
And there's been a lot of jokes about the rangers in both of my groups that are my regular groups, because the rangers their dice rolls are just abysmal. Yeah, they did this big quest for this wizard a little while back, and the rangers rolls in the wilderness lore checks were so bad that when they finished the quest and they succeeded, they brought this wizard back the artifact that she wanted and all this stuff. So she gave me each a minor magic item, and she gave the ranger an arrow of direction because he kept lost in the woods. Like a 1 in 4, 4 in 6 chance of success, and he'd blow it like every time. It became a running joke about the rangers get lost in the woods, and it's happening in both groups.
Nice.
The ranger just always gets lost.
All right, so if you're watching this and you made it this far, thank you so much for listening to two old men talk about the game they love. Please go check out, the links will be down below. Check out the Necromancer's game, live on Kickstarter right now. We'll be live for the next 3-4 weeks, correct?
Yeah, another 35 days or something, I think.
All right, so, and then go check that out. Bill, it's always good to catch up with you. Skull, go Bikes.
Skull.
And yeah, just take care of yourself.
Yep.